Well, the main reason that we're having the show tonight and have Mr. James L. Edwards come on and speak about his film, just some of his, uh, what he went through making it, just some of his background. But we're here to talk about Her Name Was Christa. So first off, James, my first question to you
Mhm.
is, what is the hardest part? Because you're the main star in this film as well.
Mhm.
What is the hardest part of directing and acting at the same time?
Mm.
The hardest part actually on that was basically assembling a crew that I could trust. Because keep in mind, it's one of those things where, I mean, to give you a little background, I had no intention of directing this movie. I have no burning desire to direct. I've always been very happy as a writer and an actor. The problem was that where I'm always appreciative of any role that I'm able to get, I was tired of playing roles that I just didn't want to play. Mark that with the fact that I was tired that as a screenwriter of submitting my script, and then obviously for good reason, the director would put their own take on it, and it wasn't quite the way I had envisioned it. So
Sure.
the idea was, I'm going to write. I want to make this movie. I initially had no intention of directing it. I was interviewing directors to direct it. What I realized during that process, after I had met with the fifth or sixth director, was I wasn't looking for a director. I was looking for somebody to say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to do everything that you say, and I'm going to put my name on it," which was unfair to the directors that I spoke to. It was at the insistence of my producer that basically said, "You've done that. You've been on what 40 independent sets. Why don't you just do this?" And I decided to do so. What I didn't take into consideration was that I'm playing for the. I had something to prove in my performance. I wanted to really show people, to showcase my abilities. So I was playing a very meek, very emotionally frail character.
Mm.
Well, it's really difficult to put your mind at that when the second you call cut, then all of a sudden you're in charge of everything. So what I was very fortunate in was having a director of photography that I could trust and a producer on the sidelines that could basically they would both be my eyes on set because I knew what I was looking for and we had done enough. We were fortunate enough we had had enough rehearsal with it where I knew the part through and through. But again, as a first-time director, you need to make sure to assemble. I always love the saying, always surround yourself with people more talented than yourself.
That's what I was going to lead into the question. Um, as a director, also the main star, it's got to be it's your vision, but at the same time, as the actor, you have to be able to take some advice or some criticism.
Right.
So what was that your DP that was really there? Like would tell you, hey James, we need to do another take on that. I don't think you hit the mark.
The DP, the DP was really good in the sense that he was going to catch anything visually that was going to be a problem. What I was really counting on was having my producer there during the rehearsals because the actress who plays Krista, Cheyenne Day, she was fantastic, but she hadn't acted in years. In fact, to be quite frank with you, she mostly before this worked as a model and did a lot of print work. And it was one of those where it was important to me to basically have the rehearsal time to not only prep her for the role and for a situation she'd never done before, but also get a chemistry between the two of us. Basically, build the characters ahead of time. That way, it was one less problem that I had on set. So I think that really helped in the long run.
I was going to say so after your wife and young children saw the movie, what did they think of it?
My kids, actually, two of my kids are in the movie. So
Oh, really?
they're still really young to see it. But yeah, my daughter, my middle child plays one of the patrons in the Gould Brothers in the haunted house scene, and my youngest, the creepy girl that catches Stephen's eye in the mother-in-law.
Yeah.
The reason we were able to make this movie was my parents had passed away, and one of the during the reading of the will, one of the stipulations of my inheritance was, listen, you've been doing these movies for a long time, and you haven't really been happy. Take some of this money and do what you want. Make the type of movie that you want. And
Wow.
it was one of those where this was a very passionate project for me. This is something that I really wanted to do. The thing is, one of the things that I've been criticized for is the base of this film is, essentially it's a romance. It's a very dark romance. But if you really want to get, primordial with it, it's like you basically dedicated a corpse fucking movie to your dead parents. It's like, well, yeah,
Now, I think, and I've said this to you before in chat, James. The feeling I got from the film, and I've told you I don't know if this were actual inspirations to you, but it's like Audition meets Necromantic. The reason I say Audition is because this is a 2-hour film, which for a low budget film, it's you don't get too many with a runtime like that. But it's it kind of lulls you almost to a false sense of security, kind of like Audition does. And then the last, the third act just goes off its hinges. Was that an inspiration to you, or do you see that as maybe subconsciously?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I never intended to make a 2-hour movie. In fact, the script, like I said, I've been writing screenplays since, and selling them since probably the mid-90s. So I had kind of paced this out with the thought of it being like an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 40 tops. It just so happened that it kind of rolled into this. But as far as to answer your question, whether they were inspirations, I hate to say this, I have a nasty habit of looking at films that are, don't get me wrong, they're good movies, but they don't really connect with me. And kind of going, okay, well, what would I have done differently with that? And to be perfectly frank with you, Audition and Necromantic both, I respect them. I think they're classics. They never really connected with me, either one of those. In fact, the two movies that I felt were an inspiration for Christa was, are you familiar with the movie Miracle Mile?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a definite inspiration only because of the fact I love the idea of two people that find love and something horribly bad happens that kind of tests that. That was a definite inspiration. And the second was the Italian film Della Morte Della More, which was released.
Oh, yeah. I love that film.
Both of those films really were inspirations for this movie. Now, again, don't get me wrong. I'm in no way saying that Audition or Necromantic are shit movies. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying they did not connect with me. And again, when a movie typically doesn't connect with me, well, as I'm watching it, I'm going, okay, why is this not connecting, and what would I have done differently? So I will say that probably had some amount of, because I do acknowledge there are definitely some similarities between those two films and this. I think my problem with Audition was I wasn't sincerely sympathetic with the lead male, and my problem with Necromantic, to be perfectly honest with you, is again, there's been a million necrophilia movies, but I had never seen where you genuinely liked the lead character, and again, like I told you before, it's one of those where I wanted a movie where you didn't agree with what the person was doing, but you completely understood why he was doing it. That was my main goal with this.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've also talked about that what I really got a feeling from this film is and I think I've told you I'm a New Yorker at heart, so I'm kind of cynical.
Right.
Your character is so nice. It automatically puts me at the point where I don't trust this guy. He's too nice. There's something in the closet here, and I think you played on that, and we don't really know a lot about the character's motivations. So we just see something much different going to happen than what happens, and that's a compliment. That's a compliment. But yeah, I really liked how you played with the audience's expectations, because you're thinking, oh, this guy is like a serial killer or something. What the hell's wrong with this dude?
And I'm so glad that you caught that, because one of the things, to give you an example, probably the closest I've come to any amount of fame was I did a movie in '96. It was a serial killer movie called Bloodletting that I got a lot of accolades for, where I play a serial killer. So a lot of my fan base was familiar with that role. So to see that I was directing something and to see the type of movie I was directing, while they're watching this movie, they're immediately going to think, oh, he's going to kill it. He's going to kill it. And we played with that with both performance as well as soundtrack, with lighting, anything we could to make you, because again, you hit the nail on the head. Stephen is a unique and very, very meek character, but you always, during watching it, thinking, there's something not quite right here. He's got to have, there's no way that he's this nice. He's got to have some kind of ulterior motive or devious plan. And I almost wanted, when the final reveal is there, because I mean, we make, there's no surprise that at some point Christa is going to die. We tell you that right in the opening credits sequence. Hell, we do it with the poster. Right. So that being said, I want the audience to be on edge and wondering, okay, is this when he's going to kill her? Is this when he's going to kill her? And then when she does finally die by means that are not his, then the audience actually feels bad. They actually feel like we completely misjudged this guy. We're an asshole, you know. So yeah. That's how I was looking at it.
Yeah, I was half expecting it to become, him to be the killer, and I think it was partly that light in the car. There was that greenish glow light, and I was like, oh, he's the villain. Like, he's gonna do something. What's gonna make him snap on these terrible attitude? These prostitutes with just horrible attitudes. And he
that scene was so uncomfortable too.
Oh yeah,
Raven, that scene's just so uncomfortable.
What cracked me up about that? This is actually a two-part answer. The green light in there was something I fought for, and actually it got me into like a pretty heavy argument with my original director of photography, because he thought that was stupid. He didn't like it, and I'm like, no, trust me, this is going to work. And it was kind of twofold, because it's like, A, I want you to be able to see all of the action that's going on in that car at all times. Mm-hmm. And C, I want that glow in there to kind of give this eerie, uncomfortable feel. And to be honest with you, it was partially that, and partially it was my little homage to the Alex Cox film Repo Man. I love it. It's just a fun little thing. That's part of the reason why not only do you have the green glow in there, but if you'll notice, he also has the little tree air freshener in the car. I wanted to make reference that. But secondly, as far as that goes, the Raven scene, you basically have a film that has three very uncomfortable and disturbing love scenes. Yet I wanted the Raven scene to be the most uncomfortable scene in the movie. And I went through 3 editors, actually, because of that scene. Because each time they would turn something in, I'm like, no, you're cutting it too quick. It's got to be long. It's got to be real long. I'm like, well, no, you're going to bore the audience. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not. Trust me. May extend this out. And they just weren't getting it. So, but yeah, that was my intention completely.
And then following that, when you finally, I mean, I don't want to say too much, but I think, so because this was, like I said, my real first beginning to end indie film in a very long time, I wasn't expecting very much. I did set my bar too high, and I was sort of just walking the paces, going through it, and after you finally meet up with your co-star, with Christa, and you guys set up the blanket and you guys start talking, that was when it started to get a little bit more real for me. I really started to enjoy, like, the conversation made these characters a little bit more human, I suppose. Like, it gave Christa it started to give her more depth, and I was like, oh, okay, I see like what we're supposed to get out of this, and who is like who this guy is and who she is, but I still had you pegged. I was like, something's gonna happen. He's gonna snap. But I was like, God dang it! I was I was so off.
One of the things that I did for better, and I think a lot of this comes from me being an actor first, was when I wrote the screenplay. One of my biggest complaints about most indie horror, and again, I'm not downing them. There are plenty of there's tons of indie horror that I love, but one of my biggest complaints is not enough attention is taken with the acting, and to be quite frank with you, a lot of times the writing as far as character development goes is non-existent. To the point where you're almost looking at, I had an effects buddy of mine who used to joke around that most indie actors are just meat props. We're just meat props. I wanted to make sure to avoid that at any cost. So that's part of the reason why it was important to me that literally 3/4 of the movie has nothing to do with horror whatsoever. It's a romantic drama. It is. Basically, the best way I could describe this, we jokingly refer to this movie as the Notebook for necrophiles.
That has a nice ring to it too. The ends.
It was just one of those things, and it's a catch-22 because it's like, I couldn't be happier with a movie. At the same token, I know it's going to be a tough sell because basically, again, you've got two genres that don't exactly mesh well. The romantic drama audience is not going to be very happy with the last half hour of this film. They're going to be very upset by the last half hour of this film. But at the same token, our horror audience is willing to sit through a relationship build to get to what they want. Will this appease everyone? No, absolutely not. But I've yet to see the film that will.
Now, Drew, is it Fortier?
Fortier.
Fortier. Okay, I didn't know if he did the French, but Drew Fortier. He plays Nick, right?
Yes.
Nick. One of the things that I saw with his character, your guys' conversation almost gave me a little bit of like a Kevin Smith vibe. Drew, he plays the comic relief, and the reason I say that is because I think Kevin Smith's his comedy just feels a lot more natural, like it's just how guys would talk, and that's what I got from the scenes with you and Drew. And he played the part really well, and he did make me laugh. But it was a lot of that. Was that a lot of that scripted, or was a lot of that just you guys playing around?
There was definitely quite a bit of it scripted, but the thing I love about Drew is the fact that he is really good at one-liners. He's really good at capturing a comedic moment. The thing that especially impressed me about Drew was the fact that he's a first-time actor. He was he's a guitarist, so he's used to performing. He was the guitarist for the 80s band Bang Tango. He was Chuck Mosley, who was originally Faith No More's lead frontman. He was his guitarist for the longest time. So he was used to performing. He had just contacted me during our casting process, and he was a fan of my earlier stuff and wanted to audition. And I sent him the sides for the role, and he was horrible. He was absolutely horrible. And the reason he was horrible wasn't his own fault at all. It was that I had sent him the sides, and literally 4 minutes later, he turned in his audition. Oh. And you got a perfect look for this, and I love your attitude. What I want you to do is take a couple of days and just get comfortable with the character. Make it your own. You don't. I always tell my actors, treat the script as a blueprint. There's something that doesn't read well for your particular style of performance. Change it. I'm not opposed to that. If I don't want you to change it, I'll let you know. If I don't like what you changed it to, I'm going to let you know. But make it your own. Within 3 days, he came back with a new audition, and he absolutely blew me away. He was amazing, and I cast him on the spot. He was actually one of the first actors that I cast.
Can I say, I did not appreciate the wood toilet seat in the bathroom.
You can blame my brother for that. He placed in his house. Actually, Stephen's house was actually a mixture of my house and his. All of the exteriors were my house, and we shot in his. And the reason for that, I'm a huge horror fan, and mostly I'm big on movie memorabilia. So my entire house is set up like a movie museum. Oh. The problem with doing that is you've just lost a location. because tearing all this stuff down to shoot here is impossible. Now, we did end up shooting all of the bedroom stuff in my house only because of the fact we had mishap with the bed and breakfast that we had originally rented out for the bedroom scenes. There was some mix-up with scheduling, and they canceled at the last second. So I had like a week to prep this room that literally was covered in movie memorabilia. I had to rip all that out, repaint, put and design it. But other than that, majority of the interiors were at my brother's house. So the wood toilet seat's all his.
For scavenger hunt purposes, I did enjoy the Nirvana T-shirt.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
The Simpsons box set I enjoyed. One thing that I enjoyed that caught me off guard was the flies buzzing in stereo. I was like, holy cow. And for a second, I thought it was, because I had headphones on when I was listening. I was like, oh, whoa, what the hell? Like, I thought it was just out of nowhere. I was like, oh, God, that's so real.
The Nirvana shirt, I'm so glad that you caught, because most people don't.
Hanson Nirvana.
That's when they review the film, and they were like, I love the movie, but I don't feel that Steven would have worn a Nirvana shirt in that one scene. I'm like, did you catch the joke of that? He's like, no. They rewatched it. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Me getting that shirt in there was so important. I actually shot, during the dating montage, we had shot more stuff that we didn't use, and one of them was a scene with Krista and Steven playing video games in his living room, where I was wearing the shirt, and a decision had to be made where the scene was going, or the montage was going too long, and 3 of the scenes had to be cut. And that one, unfortunately, had to be cut. I'm like, damn it, I really wanted that shirt in there. And then when we had to shoot this, I'm like, oh, I'm wearing it. Fuck it, I'm just going to do this.
So, Drew has actually gone on. He's going to be directing Dwellers, right? Or they're directed already, and you're acting in that one as well.
Yeah, that's that came about because he had hooked up with the bass player from Megadeth, Dave Ellefson, and he really wanted to do a caught-on-camera thing, and I'm basically playing an over-exaggerated version of myself, where he asked me to do this documentary on missing homeless people, and we discover that what's happening is very sinister. So it's been a lot of fun. He's a really great guy. I love working with him. He's just so nice and energetic, and he hasn't been tainted by the system yet, which is nice. So it's
now with Krista, is this giving you a new outlook on directing? Is this something you want to continue doing, or do you want to stick more to acting?
It's funny because when I first decided to do Krista, like I said, I had no aspirations of directing, and this literally was going to be a one and done. It was going to be one of those where it's like, okay, I'll direct this one. This is my passion project. I don't need to do anything else. And then from doing the film, it got me excited to do more. So while we've been in both post-production as well as attempting to sell the film, my director of photography came to me and said, look, I have some investors that might be interested in putting some money into these. The problem is this is older money. So they're not going to want to sit for a 2-hour movie, and they're certainly going to be offended by the end of your movie. So what do you say we shoot a couple of short films just as investor tools and kind of go from there? And I said, well, I'll be honest with you, I'm not really into shorts, but I would be willing to do it if we can kind of work it out to where it's part of an anthology, where I'll write the scripts, we'll do a wraparound, and we'll just I don't want to do anything just as an investor tool. I want people to see my stuff. So we broke ground on this, where I wrote 3 scripts and a wraparound. We've shot 2 of them so far. And it's funny because the first one that I did was a short film called Mama's that is about a young man whose mom may or may not be killing his girlfriends. We shot this thing, and it turned out really well. I'm very happy with it. I brought Kaylee Williams, who played Raven, back for it, and Sasha Graham, who played the psychiatrist at the end, back for it. And we shot the film. It went really well, and we put it together, and I'm watching it. It's like, okay, there's a problem. I've watched Krista now between focus groups and distributors and just people that worked on the film or just getting opinions. I've probably seen the film 300 times. And not to sound arrogant, but I've never been bored. any time that I've seen it. I absolutely am in love with this movie. I've watched Mama's Boy now about 30 times, and I like it. I'm very happy with it, but I'm not getting that same passionate feel about it. I was racking my brains trying to figure out what the hell did I do wrong. And then it dawned on me, it's like, hey, asshole, you're an egomaniac and you're not in this. So I'm not as passionate about this. So it kind of dawned on me that from here on out, I will continue to direct if I'm able to. I just won't direct if I'm not starring in it. Let's put it that way. The whole idea was mostly as a tool to basically get me to play better, give me the opportunity to play better roles and get my scripts produced in a way that I was happy. So I think it was a lot of that. So far, like I said, we've shot 2 of the shorts, Mama's Boy, and a second one called First Date that stars me as well as Cheyenne Day, who played Krista. And it's about a couple who have met online who are meeting for the first time in a diner. And during the conversation, the guy realizes that they're just not clicking. It's not really something he wants to pursue. But when he attempts to leave, she's decided that they're soulmates, and she's basically decided to take the entire diner at hostage at gunpoint until he realizes they're supposed to be together.
Ooh, okay.
So that's what we're working on now.
That sounds like an interesting premise. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up about Krista, one thing that I liked was during the third act, during the big reveal, I really liked the change in music and look from Steven's fantasy back into reality. That, and along with the split screens earlier in the scenes as well, kind of harken back to like Brian De Palma, who loved to do the split screens. But I really liked the change in music and the look there. Was that something that you're trying to go through for the whole time, or was that something done in post?
That was something that I had intended the whole time. I'll be honest with you, the De Palma split screen was something that I was racking my brains when I was writing the script, how I wanted to differentiate the reality versus fantasy. And we played around with a lot of things, again, while I was writing the script, where it's like, okay, do we want to do black and white and color? Do we want to do some weird, like almost like an interference in between the two, almost like a. And the reason I went with the De Palma thing was I'm a huge De Palma fan, for one, and two, it was one of those where I initially wanted that, but I didn't want to rip him off, to be perfectly honest with you. And then I had seen the De Palma documentary where he basically admits that, no, actually, I got that idea from this other movie. I'm like, okay, well, fuck, free game. But no, I'm a huge fan of De Palma, especially Body Double. I absolutely adore. It's just one of those things. The thing that's hard to do, and again, not to down anybody, but since the 90s, where Tarantino made it very in fashion to pay homage to other films, you're walking a fine line between, okay, what's safe to emulate versus what's going to be considered a ripoff, So, like, little things that I'll do to kind of pay homage to other films are, like I said, the green light in the car from Repo Man. If you look at Steven's bank records during the one scene where he's realizing he's going broke, you'll see.
I was looking through those.
Yeah, you'll see Omni Consumer Products, which is OCP from RoboCop. You'll see Spectacular Optical, which was in Videodrome. I'm trying to think what else we did on there. Oh, the smiley face sticker on Steven's rearview mirror is a direct homage to the Howling. So it's like little things like that I love to put in my movies. Now, am I going to try and rip off full scenes? No, that's ludicrous. But I do like to pay homage, definitely.
No, I respect. I like when I can see filmmakers. I like to see when not rip off, but I like to see some of their influence in their work, because it kind of it helps me relate to what their vision is as well. And I was like, okay, I can the split screen that makes me think of De Palma, but it also makes me this guy is very literate in film, and the way he uses this, it works for the scene. So I never knock somebody. there's nothing totally original anymore. It's just impossible at this point. So I like to see a little love to great directors.
Exactly, and that's the thing. It's one of those things where I don't know of a director working right now that isn't influenced by somebody, because otherwise they wouldn't have gotten the business in the first place. So yeah. But yeah, that was just my little loving nod to De Palma.
So how did you find Cheyenne? How did that casting process go?
Process is actually it's one of those things where it was incredibly nerve-wracking, but it paid off. Originally, Christa, in the early stages, was supposed to be a collaboration between myself and an actress that I had worked with in the 90s, where we had kind of developed a following as a horror indie couple. We'd done a couple of films together, and people were recognizing the fact that we were always playing couples and we had decent chemistry. So she was in Los Angeles, I was still in Ohio, and we'd still talk from time to time, and she'd talk about how she's having difficulty getting work, this, that, and the other thing, and she wanted to do something risque. So I wrote Christa with her in mind. And unfortunately, the most polite way I can put it is we had to part ways due to creative differences. And it left me in a really bad situation because I had purposely written the script to where Christa does not share any screen time with any main actor aside from myself. And that was intentional because, A, I was having to fly an actress in from Los Angeles, which was going to cost a small fortune. But also, I mean, to be quite frank, I knew that she, as well as myself in those days, we were kind of a nightmare to work with, both kind of a little diva mentality. So I wanted to be as smooth as possible. And again, I'm not downing her. I was the exact same way. I mean, age is a very humbling monster. Let's put it that way. So it's like I've learned to maybe to chill the fuck out a little. So when we parted ways, we ended up putting casting calls every possible place I could think of. Literally every casting agent, every Facebook actor area. We ended up auditioning 73 actresses for the role of Christa, ranging from all over the U.S., a couple in Canada, and one in Germany.
Wow.
And oddly enough, the one that actually, let me back up a little bit. It came down to 3 actresses. One or two of which I'd worked with in the past, and one of them wasn't even an actress. She was an adult entertainer that was just so passionate about the project and had such a great audition. I was pushing for her because I like the idea of using an unknown. And my producer and cinematographer were pushing for this other actress. So we were at each other, not at each other's throats, but we were kind of batting heads with that. Out of the blue, I had received an email. And it was from a post that I did literally, thinking that nothing was going to come of it, in the local Craigslist, in the gigs section. And it was this email from this young woman who basically said, look, I'm interested in what you have to say, but if it has anything to do with porn, don't bother contacting me. It doesn't have anything to do with porn. You are going to be required nudity, but it's not pornographic. Would you be interested in me sending you the sides for the film and meeting in a public area? She's like, absolutely. So she reads the sides. We set up a time. We go down there, and right off the bat, I literally, it was one of those where I had already just assumed that we were already cast. I was actually treating this audition as, well, maybe we'll use her on the next one, or maybe we'll throw her in somewhere, and we get in there, and she's like, she's basically telling me, I don't think I'm going to get this part because typically casting directors don't like my voice. And I'm like, well, I'll be honest with you, your voice is actually a major selling factor for me because I have a unique voice and I think it'll complement it. So we do the scene, and she's amazing. She's absolutely what I pictured for the role. So we're talking, and I'm like, there's got to be a catch here because I've been interviewing girls from all over the U.S. This girl lives 10 minutes down the road of my house. There's no way this is going to work. And I hit her with a bunch of questions. She was completely fine with the nudity. She had no problem with the schedule. She had no problem with the pay. it was like, great, but let's do this. So, but again, my main concern was because she wasn't familiar with the with independent filmmaking. It was important to me to do the rehearsal time. So like I said, we took 3 months off to cast the role, and then another 2 months to do rehearsals, and another month for additional pre-production, and went back into film. So just kind of went.
Wow.
Well, one question I always have to ask filmmakers who I interview, and I understand you're still working on distro, so if you got to sidestep the question, I fully understand. But what was your working budget on the film?
Well, we came in just under 25,000.
Okay.
And it's one of those where I was trying to raise a lot more than that because, again, I was expecting to have an actress come down from Los Angeles. We had actually been in discussions with a couple of, not major players, but a couple of people that initially I felt that there needed to be a couple of names. So to give you an example, we were talking initially with Corey Feldman's representation for the role of Nick. We also were speaking to some people with John Waters for Blaze.
Oh, really?
When we realized that our budget was not what it was going, what we had hoped it, I had to streamline everything. And to be quite frank with you, I think that actually helped because had we gotten those two actors, I think people would have been more focused on the fact that, oh, there's Corey Feldman, than they would have believing the Nick, you know. So,
I like Drew much more than Corey Feldman in that role.
Well, it was actually kind of an in-joke because in my youth, because I've been acting since I was 12 years old, but in my youth, a lot of people thought I looked like Corey Feldman. So it was like kind of an in-joke, oh, let's get, I knew somebody who knew his representation. I'm like, oh, let's get him, you know, so, but yeah, it just, it would have been fun, but I actually think the movie would have suffered because of it. Let's put it that way.
You're on a desert island. What 3 films do you take with you?
The 3 movies I'm probably going to pick are Battle Royale, which is my favorite movie of all time.
Wow.
I will pick the original Dawn of the Dead, and I will pick the one I mentioned before, De La Morte de la More. Those are going to be my 3 picks.
Good old Cemetery Man. Hey, Raj, have you seen that one?
Which one?
Well, the American release is called Cemetery Man.
No.
So, cover it. Yeah, it's basically about a guy who runs is the night watchman for a cemetery in Italy, and after 7 days of burial, the dead start coming back to life, and rather than he's afraid he's going to lose his job, so instead he basically kills them again and puts them back in the grave.
It's hilarious.
It's absolutely an amazing movie. I could watch that movie day in and day out. I'm a huge
What
fan.
year is that?
I believe that was 96, if I'm not mistaken. It's either 94 or 96.
That is one of those unheralded classics. Like, if you talk to real horror fans, that's considered a classic, but mainstream audiences don't really know about it. But it's an awesome film.
Well, oh yeah, and also because you guys did the honorable mention thing, I'm going to let you know I'm going to try and sneak in when nobody's looking onto the island the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre as well.
That's probably my favorite horror ever. I just can't.
It really is.
It's such an important film. Have you seen the 4K restoration on that?
I have, and I'll be honest with you. I bought into the whole 4K. I bought the player. I bought the TV. I bought the receiver. Newer films look stunning on it. Don't get me wrong, but it just seems like every time I get a 4K of a classic horror film, especially one of that budget, it cleans it up too much. Trying to watch Evil Dead in 4K, you're picking out every single effects mistake. You're picking up it's just not the same experience.
Yeah, it's something that the one that they did for the 40th anniversary, I was really surprised how much I liked it because I was kind of in your train of thought. But the 40th anniversary one, it just looked so good. I think they did an amazing job with the Halloween restoration, and the Alien restoration.
The one, yeah, but the other ones, yeah. Again, my concern is a lot of these films weren't meant to be 4K. A lot of these films, it's more damage than good. It's the same argument when stations started broadcasting in 4K. But if you remember the first couple of years, all of the newscasters looked like shit.
Yeah. Well, it's like the 4K restoration of Suspiria. I got the restoration, but to see it in actual 4K, I don't think it's going to look as good.
Right. Well, again, a lot of that's nostalgia too. You have to keep in mind we grew up watching a lot of these movies on VHS. So that being said, a perfect example. I remember the first time that I had seen the Peter Jackson film Brain Dead or Dead Alive. This was back in the old bootleg VHS days, and I had some shitty 13 generation VHS that was so bad it was practically in black and white. And it had a completely different feel than when I ended up buying the Laserdisc of it when it came out. It's like, to watch it in black and white and gritty and everything, it's almost scary, and then you're watching it cleaned up, it's like, oh, this is a comedy, I get it.
Yeah. Now, is there plans for a VHS copy of Her Name Was Christa?
Be opposed to it. My problem that I'm having, to be quite honest with you, is I've been shopping the film for about 6 months now, and we've gotten 7 offers on it so far, and the majority of them I turned down right out of the gate because it's right now it is a buyer's market, so they're aware they don't have to pay you anything for your movie. You can hope that you're going to get something on the back end, but chances are you won't. We've had a couple that have offered money up front, which is nice. But even then, the difference is they always want to change something. Hey, we want to cut a half an hour out of your film because it's too long. Hey, we don't like the poster. Hey, we don't like the title. Hey, you know what? We're going to go ahead and market this as a zombie fuck movie. It's like, that's not what this is, And it cracks me up because I met with a potential distributor, and they were explaining what they want to do with it, and I fought them tooth and nail. And they're like, well, you've heard of bait and switch, right? I'm like, yeah, it's a bad thing. And they're like, no, it's going to be the difference between 1,000 people seeing your movie versus 100. I'm like, well, that does me no good when 800 of them feel duped when they see the movie. But they don't care about that because that's your problem with making your second film. They're just worried about this film right here. So, again, I get it. I understand their mentality. It's just not something I want to play into.
You see it so much nowadays. I think The Witch is a perfect example of how they marketed that movie, and I think it's a brilliant movie. It's one of my favorites in the last few years. But the trailers and how they marketed it was like a lot more of a straight horror film. And then audiences saw it who are not art house audiences, and they were pissed off.
Right. I completely agree with you. And again, who was that? Was that Artisan that released that, or Lionsgate?
That's A24.
A24. Well, A24 doesn't care because they got their money, but at the same time, it's like, well, for me personally, and again, it's very easy for me to say this considering that, to be quite frank with you, the only person I made this movie for was me. I know that sounds shitty. I know that sounds like I've ostracized people. No. I wanted to make the movie that I wanted to do. Now, on a business end of that, it's very foolish. It would have been much more beneficial for me to do either a straight gore fest or just remove the horror completely and just make a romantic drama. It's not something I wanted to do. Am I willing to lose audience numbers because of that? Absolutely. I have no problem with that because, again, at the end of the day, I'm the one that has to live with the finished film. So it's not to say I don't want people to see it. Dear God, please see this. But
no, and I think we've had a similar conversation before, and I respect that. I'm a metal punk kid from back in the 80s, and selling out was the worst fucking thing you could ever do. So when somebody's DIY and they're making their art because that's what they love to do, I have nothing but respect for that.
Right. Oh, exactly. Now, again, make no mistake, if I had investors that were basically knocking on my door saying, "Shit, we need to get our money back." Oh, trust me, this would have been a completely different situation. But thank God it wasn't. It's just one of those things. I was very fortunate. I got to do the movie that I wanted, and if it finds its audience, I'd be dancing a jig. I'd be thrilled. But if it doesn't, at least I have a movie that I didn't compromise on.
I'll say one thing: the special effects or the corpse in the bed, it became more and more impressive the later the months as the months dragged on. As she was around.
We were very fortunate that we were able to get just an absolutely amazing effects artist, Alan Tuskus, who worked for K&B as well as Robert Kurtzman's Precinct 13 in Cleveland. He had done effects for From Dusk Till Dawn, Cabin Fever, Men in Black 2, Tusk. He had helped build all of the walrus suits for that. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where we met with him. He was amazingly nice. He got the project. He understood what went into it. He was willing to work with us. And what was funny about that was the week before he had been on set for Christa, he was doing burn effects for a Helen Hunt movie. And then the week after, he was working with Bruce Willis. So it's like just that of star power involved. I couldn't have been happier.
Yeah, the last corpse was my favorite. That one was just like, oh god, I was waiting for it just to fall apart, and I was like, oh, gross.
Much my children's disapproval, that corpse is standing in my living room.
Yeah, and he did a really, really good job, and the special effects in this film, it's not a big part of it until the end. So it was great that you were able to get somebody so talented to do that, because they knocked it out of the park. It was it grossed me out a little bit, and I don't get grossed out too easily.
I can't go into it too much, but there are two scenes that typically, if somebody's going to bail on the film, I can pinpoint the exact two scenes that's going to happen. And one is the final shot in the second love scene. I think you know what I'm talking about?
I believe so.
And the last one is that final love scene where he's got her leg up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I said it's always amusing to watch the film with other people.
Oh.
Like, because that makes it. I'm sure as an audience member, it's like you're sitting next to the guy that you're watching do it. It's like,
My other favorite scene was there's one that, like I said, I really want to say it, but when you are in the midst, in the throes of passion with this corpse, there's a scene where you are, giving pleasure to this corpse, and you come up with a mouthful of
Yeah, I think that's what he was talking about.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because I was like, wait, is that it?
Well,
Oh man, it's just like, what? How are you hallucinating past this?
and that's the thing too. One of the things that I wanted to do with this was if we're gonna make this kind of film, let's try and push it as close to the edge as possible, but not be pornographic with it. Yeah. I want it to be close. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want to, because if you go too far with it, it just seems cheesy. It really does. You've got it right at that edge. It was funny too because while we were cutting that, we had tons of footage. We had tons of footage to use for that, and it was just getting the right mixture. And there were a couple of times where I literally had to go, okay, we're crossing a line here. We gotta kind of pull it back just slightly. So, but yeah, I think we did it. I'll be honest with you.
Just after that scene, I noticed, there's a scene where you're in the bathroom and it's almost a point of realization for the character, and he looks over and the other star has her lines and she's gone, and there's a saying on the wall that says, "When it rains, look for rainbows. When it's dark, look for stars." And I felt like that pretty much sums up the character, because it's like he's always just looking for the better side of it. And I mean, if there's any other situation that he needs to look on the better side of it, it's this right now, right? This corpse that's sitting with him, and it's like, oh, that like sums up everything he needs to do right now.
And the funny thing about that is that was a happy accident. That was actually on location when we scouted it. And again, I went in, checking the place out, seeing how we were going to shoot everything, and I noticed that sign. I'm like, oh, we've got to use that somewhere. Somewhere that's got to be in there. So I also, we were talking before about like movie homages. The scene with him looking in the mirror, completely Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. That was so important to me to throw in, because again, it references back. It's like, hey, remember when you thought he was a serial killer? Well, here you go.
Now that you say that, I definitely know where the part that you're talking about, and that didn't click with me. But now that you say that, I definitely see the correlation.
And then lastly, I was going to say the one other thing, and I only remembered a lot of these because, man, it's just, there's so many things. And I was like, I got to start taking notes, and I wrote them all down. The other thing that I loved was when he told off his boss, and just like that, I was waiting for it. I was like, just do it. And he walks away, and then it sort of comes out as a mutter at first. He's just like, F you. And then I was like, just do it. Just get up and blow it out. And then he just like goes all out. I was like, oh, that's so good.
That was a fun scene to shoot because the actor who plays Blaze is an actor out of Maryland named Rick Germain. And Rick and I had actually met Rick on the set of a film that I did out there called Killer Campout. And it was basically like a throwback 80s slasher film where I play a bounty hunter and he's my rival as the sheriff. And I had so much fun working with him. So working with him kind of reminded me of, you know, the scene in True Romance where it's Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken, where they had this just really amazing scene where they're both just, you can't tell who's overpowering the other one as far as dialogue, as far as scenery chewing goes. And I loved working with him in that aspect because he's such a talented actor, and he plays a great asshole. He's so good in that particular role. So getting the opportunity to bring him down for it was just a joy. It was a lot of fun.
Well, it's great to discuss this film with you, James, and thank you for the opportunity to see it. Get your plugs in. Where can people find out more about James? Facebook, all that good stuff.
Well, there is, of course, the James L. Edwards Facebook page, and also there's a Her Name Was Christa page as well, so please check that out. Check out the trailer on YouTube. Our hope at this point, the decision has been made after, like I said, trying to sell this thing for 6 months and not really being happy with the offers that have been coming in. We've made the decision to do a limited edition self-release. We're going to see how that goes. Those are always weird because on one hand you're going to make more money, but at the other hand it may limit your audience. I'm still not opposed to that. Another decision was made that, to be quite frank with you, I'm not thrilled about the idea, but I'm willing to test it out. Festivals are not a fan of this film. And festivals are not a fan of this film because of the runtime. I mean, we've gotten some really great feedback from festival runners, but they all have said, listen, it just doesn't fit in our time slot. It's too long. Which I feel is ludicrous, but so be it. And I met with an editor recently who basically said, look, I can trim your movie down by 20 minutes and you won't lose a scene. And basically, I'm calling him on. I'm seeing it won't destroy my director's cut. That's the one that's going to be released on DVD and Blu-ray. But I'm willing to do a festival cut just to see how it'll go. So we're gonna try and do that as well. And my hope is that if we're able to sell the limited well, then I'd like to do a roadshow. So I'd like to pick 10 cities throughout the U.S., load up the Christa corpse in my car, and just start showing it in houses. So we'll see how that goes.
Little Rudy Ray Moore style, huh?
Exactly.
Well, It was great having you on, James. Would you like to stick around where me and Raj will talk about a few films we saw this week? And if you'd like to stick around, we'd love to keep you.
That'd be great. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, folks. Look out for that film for Krista to come out. Let me see here. Her Name Was Christa will hopefully be hitting soon.
Oh, my hope is that the film's going to be out on Valentine's Day of 2020.
Oh, awesome. So yeah, go send James a friend request. It's under James L. Edwards, and go like the Her Name Was Christa page so you guys can keep up to date and get a chance to see this. I highly recommend it.